Hi, guys. This is Martha Novak. You saw me nodding to my husband who's standing outside the glass door going, "Is it working?" Hello, I'm Martha Novak, and I'm awfully glad that you're with us today. We have our technical difficulties from time to time. Anyway, we're trying to work them out in various ways. I'm trying a new location this morning. Um, we are on Blog Talk Radio. Oh, good morning, Michelle. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. We are on Blog Talk Radio and we are on Facebook Live. I hope both feeds hold. If they don't, you can always go to the other one. And an easy access to this is usually through my website, which is Martha Novak, Novak.com. Under radio shows, there's a button that you can push that will bring you right into the live show. This is a live show. And our guest call-in number today, and we've already got a caller. I'll be to you in just a moment. The guest call-in number is 347-850-1647. Today we're going to talk about sadness. It is one of the primary emotions. You'll hear what I mean by that in just a minute. And, well, thank you. Oh, hey, Poppy. How are you, darling? I'm so glad that you all are tuning in today. That makes me feel so good. We appreciate all of you all supporting this show. Anyway, we're going to talk about sadness today as one of the primary emotions and what to do about it and what it does for us, because indeed it does do something for us. And it depends on what mind you're in. And that's really important to know whether you're in the ego child's mind or in the highest self mind, because it does various things for us in both those minds. Let's start off with a prayer, and then the first thing I'd like to do is go to my 226 phone call. It's been waiting for quite a while. So here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much. We open ourselves now to see, hear, sense, and know what you will have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. Dear God, you will have the next steps for us. It is nothing that anybody can tell us except us and you and the you in us. We thank you so much for all of this. We open ourselves to the lesson at hand and to anything else you have to tell us about our lives and where we're going next and the next step to take. We thank you so much, dear God. Now we say to make this so that we know nothing, for it is you through us and through all things that know everything. And we open that to who we open ourselves to who we really are, past the ego child's mind, past all the negative things that mind tells us, to really receive the truth today. We thank you so much, dear God, and so it is. Amen. Hello, Kat. I'm awfully glad that you all are all with us today. This is a family, you know. All right, I'm going to, let's see if I can bring in this phone call. Sometimes I can, sometimes I cannot. Hello, I'm talking to a 226 exchange. To whom am I speaking?
Hi, Martha. This is Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you, dear heart?
Good, thank you. I'm glad to be able to listen to your show. Blog Talk's been having problems, so I haven't been able to find it on their page.
Oh,
but
my.
I get the notifications emailed to me, so I can call and listen.
Well, I'm so glad that you tracked us down, Jennifer. That's just lovely. Thank you so much for doing so. You know, technology is really wonderful when it works. But there are so many things that could go wrong, and I am such a non-adept at this. I am really unadept at all of this. It is beyond me. If it wasn't for my darling husband, I just don't think I could do anything these days. I try to learn, but I always quake in my boots, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You should have seen me yesterday teaching a class on Skype yesterday for the first hour and a half, and it wasn't through any fault of mine, really. I'm delighted to admit it. If it was, it must have gone down, I don't know, 20 times. We were all so frustrated we didn't know what to do, and then all of a sudden it cleared up. Darling, what can we talk about today with you?
I feel like I've built a solid foundation. You know, I've got the knowledge. I've, put things into place. But like your prayer said, I'm just looking for the next steps.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, I'm taking care of my childhood issues for the most part, but just wondering if there's anything lingering that I need to take care of before moving forward.
Yes, darling, or you would be moving forward. With all due respect, I want to always, always, always validate what you've done. We've all tried our best and tried everything we know. What they're saying to me right now is you're ready for a whole new level of clearing and experience. Everything has not been cleared. This has to do with, hang on just a minute, and I'm not going to reveal anything, of course, but I want to pick up a little more. Hang on a sec. There's some more to do with Dad. I don't know in what aspect. We can certainly talk about it if you want to contact me outside the show, but there's more there. Now, the irony here, Jennifer, is that we usually, a lot of times we align with one parent and against the other. And so we don't realize with the parent that we've aligned with, we think all our problems are with the one that we didn't align with. I don't know whether this is you. I'm really talking to the whole group right now. I hope you understand that. Because I think that people don't realize that when there is a villain parent in our perception and a parent that seems more like us, we align so with the other parent that we have more issues actually with them than we do with the parent that we classed as the villain. So we start becoming like them. You have done a lot of work on yourself. The only thing that is missing here is there is some depth that you have not reached. There is some deep levels of convolutions. You had said something to the effect of you've learned what you've needed to learn, and that's wonderful. We'll never finish. Those of us that are in consciousness work, we really do need to make our peace with the fact that we'll never be done. We'll never be done. That doesn't mean that your life's not going to be spectacular. It's going to be spectacular while you're not done, because none of us are ever done. We're just works in progress. When we're in the ego child's mind, this is a terrible thing. Oh, Jennifer, we're in full of the drama of the burden of it all. Actually, the more you go, the more you realize what a privilege working on yourself is, what a privilege a global perspective is, how wonderful to see things that you would have rocked you or made you very dramatic or something, and it just doesn't anymore. It's the most marvelous thing in the world. Now, I think that a lot of your work on yourself, this is according to what I'm being told right now, has been in the mental realm. You have understood. But the deeper levels of consciousness that we're talking about right now, real deep levels, the arenas of your excellence and your potential, are when every one of your bodies, if you will, gets it. In other words, it's not just mental, it's emotional, physical, spiritual. You think new thoughts, you have new, deeper feelings, you are a fabulous psychologist about yourself and the whole world. You do new things, and you certainly entertain deeper esoteric levels of spirituality. So I think that you are doing beautifully. Spirit says keep going, because there is a depth that is there, and I need for you to find that instructor. There is a depth here that you have yet to plumb, and you're ready for it. And this is one of the things, as I was putting today's talk together, is that you want to, how did I say that? You want to absolutely feel what you're feeling, not get stuck in it, but not to move too fast through it either. We've got to be very honest with what we're doing. And I can tell that you are tired of doing what you're doing. I can tell that. And you're ready to move on. And you're mistaking that for being ready to move on. Really ready to move on. Because nobody who's really ready to move on ever talks about being ready to move on. They are moving on. You understand? So there is something that is still left. It does have to do with the dad. It does have to do with the dad not moving on, by the way. So that's what Spirit is telling me. Now, if you have any more specific questions, I am delighted to answer them. I'm just always trying to protect your sensibilities too, because this is a radio show that goes all over the world. So there we are. So is there anything else you'd like? Yes.
I thought that I had equal. I think as a child, you do favor a parent, but I think I see, what their capabilities were as parents, and I've looked at it and said, okay, well, that they did what they could do with the tools that they had. So that part I thought I was okay with. Now, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but I did a past life regression once with a doctor, and he said, go back into the womb, but I couldn't do that at all. Now, he didn't give me any follow-up after. So I'm wondering if that could be maybe part of.
Yeah, darling, you're answering your own questions. Oh, Jennifer, I've talked to you before, and I'm crazy about you. I really am. You're marvelous. And you ask such wonderful questions, and you have such wonderful comments. I really want to acknowledge that. I think you're just great. I always consider you a friend when I hear your voice. Anyway, here's what I'm hearing you say, and I want to address what the doctor said to you and your process and your inability to go there. Your adult mind, there's an adult mind and there's a kid mind, right? The adult mind is saying, I understand why my parents did what they did. I get it all. And that's nice and mental. And I mean mental in a positive way. That's nice and thoughtful and clear. But the injured part of all of us is the part before we're 7 or 8 years old. And that kid that is still active and alive in you and propelling you to think and feel and do and believe certain things doesn't buy it. It was wounded. That child was hurt. That's what a lot of people in searching don't really understand. Yes, you've got this wonderful global perspective. Everything is in place. It's just wonderful. It makes you feel like you've really done everything. But that baby hasn't been addressed. Now, let's talk about this doctor, because he's right. Jennifer, you are so on the same wavelength with me, because as I was making notes this morning, one of the notes I made was all this starts in the womb. And I want to explain what I'm talking about, okay? Because I actually wrote some things down. If you're watching, I think you're talking to me on Blog Talk Radio. But for those of you that are watching on Facebook Live, you're going to see me looking down at my notes, because I address this very thing as the first point I wanted to tell you. The energy of emotion, all emotion, is set up in the womb. Your mama feels something and we feel it. Now it's a chemical reaction. She's passing the chemicals on to us, but because she's a whole human being, she has all of these feelings. We have all of these feelings, but we've got an undeveloped sensibility, an undeveloped mind. All we are is this little undeveloped thing of love. That's really all we are, right? So we have some things, for example, like sadness or anything else, anger, that we don't understand, but we're receiving the chemical component of it in the womb. So the child stores it. We take it and we put it there and say, maybe one day I'll understand this. I'm going to look for things that explain this. So that we've got all these little compartments that we don't understand, that our mothers felt, that we felt chemically. We don't get it. All right. The next thing is when we are born, we start seeking experiences that explain what we felt in the womb. And this is why we view the world a certain way. This is why we start collecting evidence for that we felt that we didn't understand. You see, it's very important that a child understands. If a child cannot understand and cannot make sense of this world, usually the child dies. We've got to have a very flexible ability, a very flexible brain. People think issues are so bad. I think issues are wonderful. They kept you alive. They made sense of your world back then in the undeveloped mind, in the child's mind. Now we're all adults and we are thinking, feeling, and experiencing something else. We're trying to say, well, if the world isn't this, what is it? Who am I if I'm not this? All of those existential questions are vitally important to ask when you're doing consciousness work, which you are. So this is how all this forms. Now, we have those lenses on of our looking for, we only see what supports those feelings we didn't understand. We only see that. So if your mother was immensely sad, for example, and I'm only choosing that because that's what the show's about today. If your mother was sad or suppressed emotionally or something like that, what happens is then we look for evidence in life that we should do that and that life is sad. And it's not even ours, is it? I mean, these are there to explain a chemical component to our gestation. So what we must do at a certain point in our evolvement, and you are there, is to work now on taking off those glasses fully so that mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, you see far beyond those things. This is the arena of your potential, sweet Jennifer. And you are fast going there. Now, I want to address the fact that you said I couldn't go to the womb experience. Darling, most people can't, especially if there was some pain involved. And a lot of times there was a lot of genuine pain. I think of mothers. I see a lot of young mothers in my practice that are pregnant, and I see what they're going through energetically, and they're fighting their child. Believe it or not, they're still trying to keep up their old life. The child's making them, ill, and there are a lot of physical things wrong, and they push through. And it's like, no. Why don't we listen more than ever? Let's get in touch. Let's really go with. But nobody does that. Okay, a few people that work with me. That's about it. So what happens here is that you go through life this way, and you cannot access that at all. I mean, it is beyond what makes reasonable sense, right? And this is why in my opinion, and I am prejudiced because this is what I do, but energetic healing is so important. Because if you have the right energetic healer, they're not going to have any agenda for you. They just want you to have a nice life. We don't care about, believe it or not, healing you. And what I care about when I'm doing my session is I want to do the best session I can for me and for you. And certainly my sensibility is that I want to help. That's if you've got a healer that is invested in healing you, you've got somebody that's got a lot of ego involved in that. So you've got to choose the right person. But what happens when you do is that they are open to finding out what happened. We can actually pick out what happened based on what's happening in your life right now. You see, everything, there's nothing that's ever happened to you since the womb that didn't happen to you back then, and we need to find out what it is. So what is it? Is it, say, and I'm just making this up, I'm not trying to tune into you right now on this part. Did your mother find out she was pregnant around 3 months into her pregnancy, and did she tell the father, and did the father say, oh, we can't afford a baby, oh my God, this is the worst possible thing that could happen, and she feels those feelings, and you get them. Mm-hmm. You see, this is how it happens. So, darling, there's some things that have been addressed back there that you need someone who beyond you to tune into. Now, here's what happens, because it's what happens to every client I've ever had. All of a sudden, you start having feelings as we unwrap all that. You start saying, there was an old childhood story about this. Oh, I remember that in the womb, my father lost his job. Oh, I remember there was a huge move and my mother was pregnant. Dear God, I can imagine the problems that went on back then. There's you start having these, they're not memories, but they're cellular memories that start coming up, because they're going to be picked up beyond what I and my team and other people pick up. All right. So what I want to say to you, my darling, is there is genuine help for you all around to do that. And that is the level we need to go to now. Good for you, Jennifer. You've given me the information that I need to have today to answer a good question for you and for the audience today. That's exactly right. We need for you to now go there and to get straight with that. Now, that is to say that if you're going to do this work, we won't ever be finished. That's a common question for me that comes out of, I think, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I came from a childhood. I came from a long line of doctors, and my uncle was a doctor. And about the worst thing he could say to any of us, and he always said it when he was mad, was, you need to see a psychiatrist. I mean, he said that to everybody, right? And it was very hurtful. The fact is, he was bipolar. He needed to. Never did, by the way. But just the way it is. Nevertheless, we grow up with that mentality of, well, if I go to see a therapist, if I go to see a psychologist, if I go to see a counselor, if I go to see a psychiatrist, when am I going to be finished? And the fact is, in consciousness work, of which healing, emotional healing, is a part, we never will be. It's a process. It's going to be, how great can you be, Jennifer? You're doing real well already. You've changed a lot in your life already. How great can you actually be? How much money can you actually make? How much fulfillment can you actually have? How much love can you actually give and receive? Oh my God. When you start playing in those fields of your excellence, life is really magnificent. And I wish that for you, my darling. So that is absolutely the truth, what that doctor said. That wouldn't be my approach, because I think that's sometimes out of people's sphere. I think that what he's saying is true, but I think it's very important to kind of grease the machinery a little bit, and then all of a sudden it starts spinning out. That is without telling you, this is not the same thing as you've heard a lot of criticisms about psychologists that say, "Oh, you've been abused," and no, we don't say things like that. But we do go back and open the doors so you can remember your father losing his job around that time, you're moving around that time, other things that we can open the doors to, so your cellular memory starts triggering and you go, hey, I think this happened, and we'll test it and see, and absolutely, if it did happen, or if your mind believes it did, that's what we work with. You see?
No, that makes sense. And I do believe, like, on a mental level is so much different than a cellular level, and I can't, that's the hard part, that's getting in on the cellular level. Yeah.
The whole thing is we have a story, we have a mythology. There's been a study done, and they invited people into, some sort of chamber, and what they showed them was some dots, various colored dots moving around on the screen, right? And they said that the red and blue dot was beating up on the yellow dot. People were interpreting what they were seeing in stories. Now, the thing that you're working toward, Jennifer, this might surprise you in the audience, is having no story at all. But being in this alive, creative moment and making it a good one. That's what we all evolved to. Our stories no longer have any energy in them at all. But you're not there yet. You're still working through some of this. The story hasn't been finished yet and resolved, so you can move on past it and fully, what's really important here is self-acceptance within the body of that story. Because if God is everything, that means God is all you are. That means it's the dark and the light. And we've got to put our arms around it all. And there's always some things that we hold against ourselves. So part of the journey is to say, oh, poor me. Okay, I'll put my arms around that for sure and love that and nurture that part of me and realize that's a part of me. But now I have the choice to do this instead. And only then do you have the choice, when we accept the whole. That's why I say, the child is the undeveloped whole. And now we have the opportunity to work on and call all those parts of us back and be the developed whole. And that's consciousness. I hope that explains some of it.
Oh, that was a totally wonderful explanation. I kind of get it now.
Good.
Thank you, Martha.
Oh, darling, you're already getting it. I know. And I'm very proud of you, and I think you're doing great. And call in anytime, please, okay? Because I love talking to you.
Oh, thank you, Martha. Take care. I'll listen to the rest of the show on Facebook.
Thank you, sweetheart. Take care now. So far, it's holding. That's the good news. At least I think so. Take care now, Jennifer. Let me know how you are.
Okay, you too.
All right, darling. Bye-bye.
I will.
Well, we have a lot of people that are listening in this morning. I'm so thrilled. Hello, Hope. Hello, Shelley. We are so glad to have all of you with us today. So that was where I wanted to start with this show that is, and by the way, we are live today. So if you do have any questions or comments, we're at 347-850-1647. That was where I wanted to start, in how these emotions get formed and why we see life the way we do. You keep in mind, we have certain lenses that were formed from what we experienced in childhood. And, consciousness is about taking off those glasses and seeing beyond those specific lenses. It's a terrific privilege. I do say with all my heart that I have had this same path that you all have, in terms of throwing myself around, being enormously histrionic. In the past, I have, when will I be finished? Why is my life so hard? Oh, all that kind of stuff. All that, all that was just part of a story that I had to let go, because the only thing that's true is you're there in your chair and I'm here in mine, and we're nothing but God's love, and we're perfectly capable of giving it, and we are open to the most creative thought there is, and that what's in the way are these issues that we have to transcend. We have to acknowledge, resolve, and transcend. By the way, you don't just transcend them without seeing them and acknowledging them and letting them become you. See, we go through life trying to push these things away, don't we? Oh, no, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel sadness. Oh, no. So there is something called the avoidant personality disorder. I actually don't like the word disorder, because usually these personality things are more ordered. That's why they're so hard to break, right? They're more ordered than the range of normal. So I like the word defenses. It's a defense. I'm going to avoid feeling sad. So we have a million things we do, right? We overwork, or we will call our friends all the time and never have an alone moment. There have been studies on that too, that people don't like to be alone. They don't like to think their own thoughts. Well, guys, that's a real important part of this. You have more, and I can't remember, I wrote this in my first book, The Life You Want. You can get it off Amazon, on my website. Go to my website, The Life You Want. And I have a paragraph in there about how you are really wired for a much stronger internal system than external system. You have more of something, what is it, neurons or something, that are geared to the inner. So what happens if you never reach the inner? What happens if you won't go there, right? So we've got to get comfortable with things. Consciousness, guys, is not in your comfort zone, because your comfort zone was built by the ego child's mind. It was built to help you avoid things that hurt you. All right? It was built on limitation. It was built on negatives. It was built on fantasy. Fantasy is its own reward, magical thinking. It was built on those things. And what we've got to do now is move beyond it and prove there's something else. You see, the ego child's mind knows nothing of the highest self. The highest self knows everything about the ego child's mind, because that's the tiny dot within the whole. So the ego child's mind, full of itself, egocentric to the max, all about me, 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 is trying to keep you there. And this is why I encourage you to find a guide, a coach, an energy worker, a psychologist, a minister. But it's got to be somebody that really can take you far beyond. And if they stop somewhere, you got to find somebody else, because this is your journey. You've got to go on. One of the things I've always been interested in is faster, deeper, better. And I think that is important for you to find faster, deeper, better. Or do you take that in yourself? Now, faster, not at the expense of self. I'm just looking for solutions, shortcuts. The more I know, the faster I can help you. You see? That kind of thing. That's faster, deeper, better. So I found an article, the title of which intrigued me. It said, "Some opportunities only sadness can offer." This was written by Grant Hillary Brenner, who is a medical doctor. I'm barely going to touch this article. I am going to cover his points, but As usually in my shows, my end result for all of you is consciousness and enlightenment. That's what I do. So I have to take articles and books that I bring to you and go somewhere else with them, because my job isn't psychology. My job isn't stopping somewhere. My job is to get you over there. So I thought this was a good article, but we're going further. That said, all right. He talks about sadness, and that's what we want to talk about today. He says it is a soft emotion, yet insistent. I think it is. Sometimes it's not so soft. I think sometimes it's small and quiet, yet pervasive, like he says. Sometimes sadness can suddenly overwhelm, becoming all-powerful and totalizing. Nevertheless, he says that it needs to be handled with care as strong medicine. Now that struck me. I liked the way he says that. It's strong medicine, ladies and gentlemen. It's designed, like all of life is designed, all feelings are designed to take you somewhere. So what happens if we avoid it? Now, there is a life pattern that I often find in people. I have to name things specifically because my job is to talk about these things in a very precise manner and to direct the energy in your body to let it go. So one of the things that I name is life patterns, is how you see the world. Now this happens usually in the womb, okay? And one of the life patterns that I often talk about is the seeker to feel good life pattern. The seeker to feel good life pattern. Now what do I mean by that? A lot of people in this world run from one feel-good experience to the other. They will, for example, and there are many, many examples of this. I can't possibly cover them all. I can give you some examples, but they're in themselves limited. But here's one. If you have a person who is constantly complimenting you, doing nice things for you, you have to ask why. Now, these things can be absolutely done in the world. There is such a thing as true altruism. But a lot of time, if you're in the ego child's mind, not a lot of times, every time, if you're in the ego child's mind, the reason you're doing it is to get something back. You see? That's an example of what I'm talking about right now. In terms of running away from feeling sad and disconnected. Are you attached? Are you trying to attach? Are you truly opening yourself, being vulnerable, and trying to connect? Because true connection has that element of vulnerability. Now, some of us really do have sadness that we were taught in the womb. We get it. And we don't know it won't kill us. You see, you have a real good reason for believing that it might kill you. And that is, when you are in the womb, you are very vulnerable. When you are a little kid, you are very vulnerable. I want to go back to something. You start out as one cell. That cell has a lot of information coming into it, and it is perceived as stress. You started out as one cell. It's perceived as stress. Science has actually seen the cell shake under a microscope, and then it either dies in the stress or it divides. Interestingly enough, these two cells can handle the same stress that broke that one, but they too start vibrating with stress, with more information coming in about growth and change, right? And either they die or they divide. Now, more of you divided, more of your cells divided. That's why you're here. Congratulations. You've done the hard part, okay? But this is why human beings perceive everything on a cellular level, on a real primitive, fundamental level. Every one of us does all over the world. We all have this in common. We perceive everything as pleasure or pain. This is why. Because to ourselves, it's either life or death. Okay? This is why sometimes we react badly to stress, when stress, if we handle it right, can be a very creative experience. All right. Now, this said about the cells, I want you all to realize this pleasure-pain thing is what guides our lives in our unconscious state, in our walking around everyday state. All right? We go toward things that give us pleasure and away from things that cause us pain, and we'll go toward something that just doesn't cause us as much pain if we don't actually have pleasure as a choice. You see? Okay. So we go toward pleasure and away from pain. So what happens when you feel sadness? Well, I think the human condition, the human reaction is to try to avoid it, to make yourself happier, to run out and see your friends, to make 1,000 phone calls, even in the middle of the night, to go to a spa, to run away to an ashram, to do anything you can to escape what you should be looking at. You've got to prove to yourself it's not going to kill you. You've got to look at it to see why you're so sad, right? Now, a lot of times, kids, we mix up sadness with other things. Sadness is a primary emotion. Now, what do I mean by that? Here's what I mean. There's a primary emotion and there's secondary emotions. You've heard me, if you've listened to the show before, you've heard me talk about this on other shows. I'm going to repeat myself because it is vitally important that you start thinking this way, and I do suggest you do. Primary emotions are pretty simple. Sadness, happiness, even joy, anger, all these are our primary emotions. And primary emotions can be defined as what is appropriate to the situation that triggers the emotion. What is appropriate? And one of the examples that I give, and God forbid this should happen, so let's just say this is hypothetical all the way. Let's say your dog runs out of the house and is hit by a car. Okay. What are your primary emotions? Shock is just a catch-all for emotions. It means there's too much emotion coming in that you don't understand, so we go in shock. So that's not really an emotion. It's just kind of this holding spot. So we can deal with the emotion later. I would feel sadness. I would feel anger. I would probably feel blame that I wasn't more careful to let the dog run out. I would be deeply, deeply grieved. Those I think are appropriate. Have at 'em. Okay, secondary emotions. I am such a screw up. This is what I do every time. I can't have anything. I can't take care of myself, much less anything else. I'll never have another dog as long as I live. This is just horrible. Oh my God, I am the worst kind of person. I'm such a failure. Is that appropriate? No, it's really not. It's really not. And what the secondary emotions are designed to do is to get you off what you should be dealing with, which are deal with your grief, deal with your sadness, deal with your anger itself, deal with those things that are primary. This is how you process. This is how you heal. If you run to the secondary, and you get all dramatic in that secondary, first of all, those things are inappropriate. They get you off the subject. They are very damaging because they don't let you process what you need to process. And that's what they're designed to do, by the way. The pain is so intense over here that you're seeking all these distractions. Do you understand? Can't have you do that. I want you to define this week, next week, the week after, because we've got to build up momentum here. I need for you all to see what your primary emotions are and stick with those. Let them process through. You've heard me in other radio shows say people don't know how to work through their problems, right? I mean, I see this in marriages all the time. They don't know how to work through anything because the individuals in that marriage haven't learned how to work through emotion. So let's do it now. Let's show you how to do this. Stay with the primaries is the first step. Stay with the primaries. And that's the reason I'm talking about sadness today, because sadness is one of the things that most people try to avoid. And I'm going to tell you why it's so good, too, that you start coming in touch with your sadness. Now, a lot of times sadness is misdiagnosed. You yourself will say, I'm depressed. And that's not true in many cases. You're not depressed. You have unresolved sadness that you have to look at. Depression isn't an emotion, by the way. It is a place that you hold yourself in this abeyance because you don't want to deal with certain emotions. It's kind of it's a repository for things that you have not yet dealt with. And we get depressed. I think that we're misinterpreting a lot of emotion. For example, anxiety. I'm off the subject for slightly, but not really. For example, anxiety, I think many times, now not all times, but many times, it's a warning bell. It's saying, whoa, going in the wrong direction. Look at this. Oh, wrong thought. No, don't go there. This is not in keeping with the ascended nature of you. And when we make these lower decisions, thoughts, feelings, we actually do something behavior-wise, or we're thinking smaller thoughts about God than it really is when we are set to know more in consciousness, we get a warning sign. Well, that's anxiety. It's just a bell that's ringing saying, hey, look at this. That's all. So is it going to go away? Well, certain parts of it will go away, but you don't want that to go away. Don't you want a warning that says, I'm going in the wrong direction, I should go in that one instead? Of course. Of course. So we often get some of those things confused with sadness. Just the primary emotion of sadness. We've got to be very precise in our language, and we're not when we start out. We're just not. We have all these misperceptions that cloud us, some of them not even ours. We've inherited them, right? And so we've got to get those off. When you get those off, you start seeing more clearly and being more precise in your language. This, I think, is one of the troubles with therapists that are mediocre, is they hear what you say and they're going from that. I think it's really important for a therapist to hear what you say, half believe it, and listen to spirit for the rest, because that is the precise language. All right. So, this gentleman, this Dr. Brenner, yes, Dr. Brenner, had several points that I thought were very good, and then I'd like to add to. Number one, inviting sadness may lead to deep relaxation. I agree with that. When we dam it all up, the resistance to what we should be doing is worse than letting it all out. When you let it all out, I guarantee there will be a relief. If you never allow yourself that relief, it makes a very hard life. And you and I have all known people that resist. There are people that are going to the morgue right now that resisted all their life. They even resisted death. That's why they lingered on their deathbed, right? There's something that is a much more powerful word. It's one of my favorite words, and that's cooperation. I think we have to cooperate with what is. I think we have to cooperate with the journey to our highest selves. And part of that is to get in touch with our emotions. Guys, we have 3 learning and communication experiences. One is through our mental thought, right? Words are very important to that aspect of us. Another one is our emotions and expressing them, which is the really important part of this, not only feeling them, but expressing them. And the third is the ability to commit to action physically, right? These are our 3 experiences of connection and learning, of communication and learning. What happens when you leave off one of them? You just simply don't have that much energy. And it's against nature, because God wants you to use all of this because you're God. You are the aspect of God known as you. And your potential is in the usability of everything and using it from the highest self, the most love-centered self, not from the egoic, child's mind, fear-based self that's full of selfishness. Okay. There's a tremendous relief in getting straight with emotion. So if you came from a family that doesn't get straight with emotion, you've got something to learn. I'm going to tell you, my family was very brainy. That's wonderful. They were lovely people. And my mother was warm and dear. My father, not warm, dear, but not warm. Very hard on the outside, very soft core. I had to learn a language of emotion. And one of the really good ways of doing that is to get on the internet and look up emotion, find an emotion sheet that has loads of emotion on it, print it out, and in your quiet moments, not just your angry moments, look at your sheet and choose the words that you are. It starts giving you a language for emotion. And it's a very important exercise when you don't know. That's a strange number. Does that mean that someone's just called in, but I don't? There's a 111111111 number, so I'll go to them in just a minute. I just don't know what that means. Okay, Michelle says, "Can you repeat that? When you resist." Oh, Michelle, God bless you. I don't even know what I said. You know, I'm so much of this is is me just channeling what God is saying in the moment. Let's see if I can repeat what you want. When you resist, you're certainly okay. Let me start here. So you say you want consciousness. You want to go to your highest self. You want to be there. All right. But we have a million ways that we resist. We magical think. We carry rage in ourselves we never get to. We never resolve the sadness in us. We avoid certain emotions. And when we resist, a lot of times we feel very anxious because those are the things we're supposed to cooperate with, go through, resolve in us so that we may be at peace and in harmony with our highest selves. I don't know if I'm saying, darling, what you wanted me to go back and pick up, but that's the thing that certainly triggered when I hear when you resist, ... So I'm doing the best I can there. Listen, it'll come around again, I'm sure. All right. And if there is, those of you that are on Facebook Live are, that caller just dropped off, are writing me questions. I am delighted to answer anything. So by all means, hello, Dadis. By all means, write any questions that you have about this or any subject. It's just fine with me. And I certainly will try to answer them like I tried to answer Michelle. The problem is when I'm talking like this and it's not written down, I don't know what that means, Michelle. I'm out of the loop. TY? I'm sorry. I don't know what that means. But anyway, by all means, ask me again. All right. His second point here is getting past the stigma about being sad frees one up greatly to feel more true to oneself. I agree with that point as well. It's really important to say, oh, I feel sad. Oh, this is sadness that I'm feeling right now. And to be non-judgmental about it, particularly for yourself. I think it's extremely important. I think this is a part of self-compassion, that's certainly a part of consciousness. I have a lot of people that judge their emotional experiences. They'll say something like, I'll say, why don't you want to admit to being sad or angry or whatever? And I'm thinking of one woman in particular who judges herself for being weak, she says, because it shows I'm weak if I'm sad. And I'll say something rather surprising. I'm going to say it to you all. And that is, you are. You are weak. So am I. We're all weak. We're all weak. Is that all you are? Is that all you are? Every single one of you would say, no, I'm more. See, this is the whole thing about self-acceptance, guys. If we are God, the aspect of God known as us, and God is everything, we ourselves contain everything. You cannot judge the fact that you're weak because you're weak and you're strong. You're rich and you're poor. You're happy and you're sad. You're angry and you're at peace and loving. You're fearful and you're loving. All of these things. You are everything. And only when you own everything, because there's such a thing as mentally holding it in, oh, that makes sense. Martha says, makes sense. Maybe Martha doesn't make sense. But today, humor me. Martha makes sense. And that's a nice mental thought. You don't have to act on it. You don't have to put your life on it, do you? It's in the mental realm. Consciousness, though, is when you understand something mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It's you. It's you. It becomes all of you. So now we have to not only entertain the idea of it, but own it as us. Yes, we're all weak. In this moment, do I want to be weak? Is it appropriate to be weak? Is it appropriate to be strong? Is it appropriate to be anything? Sadness is not, by the way, in my opinion, weakness. And the reason I say that is there is a rapport with all life. Guess what the rapport is? The rapport is emotion. It exists in the emotional body. Feelings unite us all as a world. We get in trouble when we are denying another culture's feelings, right? Feelings unite us all as a world. It is the basis of rapport. Not that you're both interested in sailboats. That's nice. But real rapport has to do with you all relating on an emotional level as human beings. Feelings unite the world. It's the basis of rapport. It's the basis of empathy and sympathy and altruism and unconditional love. If I were you, I'd want that. So we have to get over the stigma of anything. And this is something that a coach, a guide can help you with. Now, I also want to put something else on the table to you that I think is important. One of the big answers that I'm always going to give my clients and you is a question that I want you to answer. And that is, what mind are you in? What mind are you criticizing yourself with? You got two minds, keep in mind. You've got the ego child's mind. This is the fear-based self. This is the self that is egocentric, me, or all about you at the expense of me, which is still all about me, because I am going to focus on me being a victim, right? It is this smaller mind. Then you've got the highest self mind. This is the adult mind, the mind that is opening and cooperating with the higher energies of God. It is love-based. There's a formula, and the formula is you and I agree to agree or disagree, but it's always an agreement. That's why it's a win-win, you see? This is who you really are in your authenticity, the highest self. So we've got to challenge that ego child's mind. So when you make a statement like, I don't want to feel sadness because it's weak, what mind are you in? Always an important question. Why am I motivated? Why am I thinking that? Why am I feeling that? What mind am I in? And that's the first step to your healing. This is it the ego child's mind? Then you need to realize this is the egoic child's mind. If you read my books, you'll see we shorten that to the ECM. I'm in the ECM. I get it. Now, raise your vibration. Move past that. Not deny it. That's part of you, but see what else is there. And then choose which one you want to be. But not at the denial of self. These are two different minds that exist in you. You see? What we do in our work is we try to resolve everything in that ego child's mind. And then what happens is you find yourself living in the higher self. You see, we deny things when we don't know how to work through them. And we are very sensitive to things, and they become scary to us when we cross a pathological line. Here's the pathological line. I feel sad is such an important thing for you to acknowledge and say. I feel sad. Pathology says, I am sad. I am sad. Can you feel the difference? I feel sad. I am sad. It's a burden to be I am. that. Emotions are just signposts. They say, look deeper, resolve this. That's all it is. They're not here to attack us, to make us feel worse about ourselves, not in any way. They are here to say, look at this, look at this, look at this. Is that all you are? I want to say, to start tearing down the I am sad. That's not all you are. You're not sad 100% of the time. That may be a programming that has not been resolved and goes under everything. But let me tell you, you're so much more than that. And you know that. And that's the whole reason you're listening to a show like this. Because if you didn't know that, you wouldn't be interested. You see? Good for you. All right. Have I covered everything on this page? I think so. All right, moving along. His next point, Dr. Brennan, is there's a difference between sadness and depression. This is what I was saying to you before. Sadness is a primary emotion. Depression is a repository for everything you don't want to get to. Cooperation with God is your allowing you to deal with the primary emotions and to move through them. Here's the thing that is so fascinating about this emotional journey and this esoteric journey, quite frankly, into spirituality. What you most want to avoid is usually the place that what you most want exists. What you most want to avoid is the place that what you most want exists. Let me give you an example. You are not going to find your divinity as the highest self except in the acceptance of your humanity. If you won't go into all your emotions, if you will not work through them and come out on the other side, you're not going to get there. Because that's the way to do it, self-acceptance of everything, right? Isn't that interesting? Oftentimes you find joy in the deepest sorrow. How many times have I stood at someone's deathbed, someone I love very much, and they'll pass away as I'm standing there. And I'm always surprised by my reaction. I feel nothing but pride and joy for them. I'm so happy for them that they've transitioned. It's a big deal. And it's surprising, isn't it? The sadness comes later. But in that moment, good for you. So many times our deepest happiness, the capacity to really be joyous, is found in the deepest sorrow. Our ability to let go and let God sometimes exists there. We get out of our own way. So what happens is there's an esoteric quality that these things that we so want are in the working through of the things we don't want. And we find there's something else underneath there. It goes into every arena. I see this constantly in life. And one of the things that is striking me right now to tell you is my mother died of spinal cancer. It was really quite a terrible, terrible thing that she died from. And as she was dying, she turned into a wraith. She looked like that little puppet on Tales of the Dark Side. Is that the name of the show? It was terrible to see. A minister came to the house, not my minister, but hers, and he said, "Don't look at her, don't look at her." And I remember standing at the door being a little put out with him, and I said to him, "I'm going to look at everything. I'm not going to look away." He didn't know how to answer that. I'm going to tell you what happened. I kept looking. And all of a sudden, in my perception, I don't know whether it was my perception or what happened to her or both. She was the most beautiful thing at the end I've ever seen. Honestly, there was such a light emanating from her, from every cell of her, that I think if the room had been dark, she would have lit it. And that's what I saw at the end. And that's the thing I remember. And it was so much more remarkable than any sadness and any grief and any horror could be. It was much stronger. We should not be afraid to look at things. We shouldn't look away. I'm saying this with all love for you. Is it hard? Absolutely. The ego child's mind tells us that God only exists in the good times and not in the bad. But is that really true? I want to say that God is there all the time. We're either using it or not using it. We're either seeing with God's eyes or we're not. Sometimes we don't. And we have to work through things to reveal that. God is always there at the base, and you're not finished until you see it. All right, his next point is when we feel sad, we often connect more meaningfully with others. And that's true. I want to put on the table that I've already said a lot of this because that's what real rapport is. However, I also want to say that's what real intimacy is too. Intimacy is not just taking off our clothes and making love to another. No, it's not that. Intimacy is really sharing ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually with someone. And if you want to be intimate, you need to give all of those emotions to someone. Okay? Dr. Brennan's last point, I believe this was his last point, yes, is feeling sad increases empathy and compassion. And it does. We realize that other people feel that too. I do want to say that I'd put it a different way. And here's the way I would put it. That feeling sad or grieved or, say, letting go of a loved one expands our capacity, important word, for love. If we're doing this right, if we're going with, and I think, for example, death is such a very powerful a force. It makes those of us that are still here have a decision. It forces us into a decision to either be bitter and small and close off, or to expand our capacity for loving even more. Because I'm here to tell you that it isn't keeping someone with us that is the most loving. It's the ability to let them go. I think of this in my own marriage. My darling Michael and I could walk away anytime. But we don't. But that ability must be there on the table for all of us, that we could leave, but we choose to stay. We don't have a choice unless you have all choices, right? You see, there is no choice unless you have all choices. You have an edict. You have something imposed on you. I don't want to be married by edict. I want to be in relationship with this darling man by choice, and he with me. A choice that I make every hour of every day. Okay. Expanding our capacity for love. That's what all of everything is about. We expand our capacity for love. When someone leaves you, when you leave someone, you always leave with more. You're always left with more. It may not be monetary, but it is worth more than that to me. Wisdom, We have expanded our capacity for love. We'll be smarter, deeper, better, listen more clearly to our highest selves next time. Sometimes this doctor goes on to say it's very hard for many people to truly empathize with others while suppressing strong, healthy feelings. Yeah, if you're not letting your strong, healthy feelings out, that is absolutely true. Sometimes people, he goes on to say, can have high cognitive empathy. I feel for you, we say with our brains, right? But low emotional empathy. I don't want to go there. I don't want to know what it's like to lose a spouse, we'll say, right? But being able to work with one's own sadness allows a deeper emotional communication to take place. As one's subjective experience matches the actual experience of the other person and catalyzes mutuality, setting in motion a fundamental shift in relationships. This is true connection. You have to be vulnerable to do this. You have to be vulnerable. It's just the way it is. Part of all of this that I want to leave with you, because we're down to 13 minutes in our show, is that we have to give up our ego child's mind of an ideal life, an ideal me, an ideal anything. There's nothing ideal. In fact, the only perfection there is God's perfection, and guess where it is? You don't see it until you accept the imperfections of everything. You, life, all right? I want to go back to something I said in the beginning, and that is the giving up of your story. Now, you cannot give up your story until you have resolved these things. I'm going to tell you, that's not good. That's denial. That's avoidance. Don't do that, please. We have to resolve things. And then you start a natural ascendancy. Then you start seeing more globally. And it's wonderful. This is where gratitude really exists. I have often observed in people that wanna, but that aren't yet ready to be where I'm talking about, that they'll use gratitude as magical thinking. It'll be part of magical thinking. Oh, I woke up and I'm so grateful for the sunrise. I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for that. You remember that that's all well and good. But there are two kinds of happiness. There's pleasure, which is momentary, and there's fulfillment, which takes a bit of effort. You're listening to the show because you want more fulfillment than pleasure. It's wonderful to have pleasure. Not knocking it. Enjoy the sunset. But as soon as it goes away, you won't think of it again. But really getting to work on yourself in some way. Really expressing your emotions, taking sadness and doing something with it. Talking about it, helping others, painting a picture, writing something that you know. Those are the things that are harder and enormously fulfilling. To that end, it's not too soon to start a wonderful exercise. I thank you too, Michelle. I'm so glad that you all are listening. To that end, I offer you a challenge. This is a 21-day challenge. For 21 days, write 3 things every day, possibly at the end of your day, once you have experienced the whole day. Every night, 3 things that you are grateful for. It can be a person, it can be an event, it can be a characteristic in you, it can be something, but you cannot repeat any of them, and those entire 21 days. What this is going to do is open your mind to start seeing the things that you're grateful for and not the things that you're not grateful for. Because one of the lenses that we have on our eyes is to see things that we don't like. You've had that on since the womb. We need to start changing the momentum now. It's not too early to open this door. It's going to open your mind more. And it's also a very good exercise to do once you have done work on yourself. Okay? Judy, I'll be right there. Once you have done work on yourself, and I'd go back to it when you're ready again so that you can access really deeper levels of gratitude. Now, Judy says, okay, every day, okay. Oh, you are so sweet, Judy. Thank you so much. She has written, illness has taken me away from me. Every day I try to find ways of accepting the going away of the real me and find new thoughts to fight the loss of me. Thank you for your words. You are so dear. You know, one thing strikes me, Judy, if you don't mind. Stop fighting. You know, illness is a terrible thing. I myself have been ill in the past, and I certainly have. I work with illness a lot with people and the emotional components of it. But it's God too, my darling. It's trying to take you somewhere, back, no doubt, to a deeper level of you and what you know and all that. I'd say instead of battling it, the real you is right there. The real you doesn't look like what she used to look like, though. You're being reinvented as I tune into you. And while this is painful and it is horrible and you don't get to do the things you want to do, go willingly into the reinvention. Realize and put your energy on that and not trying to find the old you, because that isn't going to happen. You weren't supposed to have the old you to begin with. This is about a reinvention of self. It's about you, all shiny and new. And darling, I wish you the best in that. And if you want to talk about that, all of you all can certainly write me and communicate with me through my website, which is Martha Novak, NOVAK.com. And I do try to answer every email I get. And certainly if you want to call, we can communicate that way as well. I care a lot about you. There is no reason for me to do this show other than that. I do appreciate your getting the word out. And when we have a show like this that might mean something to you, please post it on social media. Please get the word around that we're here and doing this work. We're trying to do our best for you. If you find that this philosophy and this method of healing works for you, you can get on that website. I've trained several people to do what I do, and we will all help you. And you can certainly work with us, and we will certainly try to get you onwards and upwards. And God bless you all. We know that you are the aspect of God you are. And that love is going to see you through. It's everything. It's taking you somewhere. And Judy, I say, you're surfing a wave right now, my darling. And the best surfers are the ones that go with. Use it. Use that momentum. As tired and ill as you are, know without a doubt that God's right there and you're going somewhere. Okay? I'm proud of all of you. I'm proud of all of you for listening to the show, because I think it really is challenging. But, of course, you can't stay in your comfort zones and have what you want. Let's do our prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much. We open ourselves now to what you would have us do, to see, to hear, to sense, and to know what the truth is on the deepest level. We now ask that all issues, blocks, needs to hold on to these things, vestiges and related issues, identities over identities, sympathies over sympathies, definitions of self, and roles we've played that no longer serve us. We ask that we see these things and we let go what we can of these things in you today. We ask that these things be transmuted from our ego self to our highest self, that is our highest self. Change these things to deeper levels of consciousness and love and authenticity of who we really are in you. We are the aspect of God known as us. We ask, dear God, that this be where we go. Thank you so much for all of this, dear God. We now open ourselves to any kind of healing at hand that we will allow you to do. And we say this in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to the show today. Thank you so much for all of this, and so it is. Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you, I really do, for everything you're doing for me by getting word around. It's so dear and sweet of you. Every week we have people that are contacting us and that listen to the show, and so if you will send these things around, that's the best thing I can ask you for. Sharing it and befriending and following and whatever other words. See, I don't do this well either, the social media thing. I try though. But thank you so much for listening. Next week, I'm thinking I'm not going to do a show. We have some guests, and that's all that's wrong. And so I think I'm going to skip next week. Please do check with my website. Please do check with the Blog Talk Radio site and Meetup, I think we're on. And these things are posted on those about whether we're doing a show or not. I need to think about this for a day or two to make sure I could actually do a show, because when there are other people in the house, it gets kind of noisy around here, you know. So anyway, check, and I will never be gone for more than one show, I promise. And then I'll always be back on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. Guys, take good care of yourselves. God loves you through you. So that means you need to wake up to how to love and honor yourself more deeply. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you now.
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Have a great week.